Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all here today to partake in our presentation regarding the viability of Vietnam as a host nation for a manufacturing plant expansion for clothing brand Otway. The purpose of our presentation is to effectively portray the conditions for business surrounding the ever-evolving Vietnamese business landscape, taking into account factors such as globalization, political influence and stance, as well as levels of trade liberalization. Here we have collated some background information that explains Vietnam's current national identity. Vietnam, with its vibrant population of over 101 million people and its tapestry of over 110 recognized dialects and languages. Currently, 41% of its people live in urban areas, and this is expected to rise to 55% by 2040. The country operates under a one-party communist state, which has provided a stable and political environment and a commitment to creating a safe and prosperous space for citizens. Since the Doi Moi reforms in 1986, Vietnam has shifted to a socialist-oriented market economy, decentralizing economic decision-making and offering incentives for production expansion. Healthcare in Vietnam has seen remarkable improvements due to globalization. It now ranks in the top third of all nations upon the Global Health Security Index. And since 1990, life expectancy has increased by over 6 years, while infant mortality rates have halved. Economic growth has been robust, driven by these reforms and free trade agreements, leading to significant developmental benefits and overall favorable economic conditions for the nation and its citizens. Finally, here is a breakdown for how the rest of the presentation will unfold on the topics that will be covered.
To begin the presentation, we'll be talking about Vietnam's globalization. Vietnam's globalization began with the renovation economic reforms in 1986. These reforms transformed the country's economy from a centrally planned system to a socialist oriented market economy, resulting in more trade liberalization, foreign direct investment, and integration into global supply chains. Vietnam's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2007 was a significant step forward, further opening the country up to global markets. Firstly, we'll be talking about three factors of Vietnam's current globalization level. Trade agreements. Vietnam has signed several free trade agreements, including the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans Pacific Partnerships and the EU Vietnam FTA. These lower tariffs and facilitate cross border trade. Manufacturing. Vietnam has become a well known manufacturing site due to its lower labor costs, competent workforce, and improved infrastructure. This is especially appealing to businesses like textiles, clothes, and electronics. Lastly, we'll talk about FDI. Foreign direct investment has been an important component of Vietnam's economy, with South Korea, Japan, and China making significant investments in manufacturing services, technology industries, and export oriented firms. To further explain this, we'll be talking about the impact on Otway's manufacturing facility. Monetary efficiency. With Vietnam's relatively low labor costs and solid manufacturing ecosystem, Otway can minimize production costs, resulting in competitive pricing in worldwide markets. Next, worldwide supply chain integration. Otway might benefit from Vietnam's strategic location and extensive worldwide trade networks, resulting in enhanced supply chains, shorter processing time, and lower transportation costs. Finally, we'll be talking about market access. Vietnam's FTAs can improve Otway's access to important markets such as the EU, CPTPP member countries, and the United States, possibly reducing tariff barriers on exports.
Hello. My name is Thirallon Rasanayagam, and today I'm going to be talking about question two in regards to Vietnam, which is our chosen country. I've decided to talk about two global processes, the first one being westernization and the second one being economic imperialism. Now, what is westernization, Thirallon? Well, westernization refers to the economic, political, and cultural influence of the West to the rest of the world. Closely associated with globalization, but it only involves a one-way flow, and it has notions of Americanization. Economic imperialism, on the other hand, is the creation of a global power that is based on command and over the use of capital. It is a subset of imperialism, which is the attainment of control of another country through methods of territorial conquest and exercising political or military control over that nation. Okay, but how does that relate to Vietnam, Thirallon? Well, Vietnam in 1986 introduced its economic reforms, which saw the country going from a centrally planned economy to a socialist oriented market economy. This opened Vietnam to foreign direct investment and trade. So, in the initial phase in 1986, when they opened their borders to FDI, particularly the manufacturing and textiles industries saw massive growth, with MNCs or multinational corporations setting up factories in Vietnam to take advantage of low labor costs. Vietnam has since attracted substantial FDI, particularly in the textiles and clothing industry, due to its favorable investment climate, with the humidity being ideal for cotton cultivation and the natural resource of the lands making it able to produce silk on its own land. Furthermore, Vietnam has extremely competitive labor costs, making it very cost efficient for these multinational corporations. According to the World Bank, Vietnam has become one of the top destinations for FDI in South Asia, with foreign companies playing a significant role in its manufacturing and textile service. This influx of foreign capital has driven industrial growth, particularly in textiles and garments, but with this, it also means that the local economy is heavily influenced by the strategies and decisions of MNCs, which in recent years have been a topic of concern over labor rights, environmental sustainability, and the potential exploitation associated with economic imperialism. The presence of numerous foreign companies has led to a competitive environment where the Vietnamese economy has been reliant on these MNCs, and same with the local people. Now, leading on to Westernization. Westernization has had significant impact on Vietnamese society, particularly in urban areas where fast food, particularly Western fast food, and Western fashion have been growing among the younger generation and the growing middle class. The recent growth has seen a cultural shift which has led to an increased demand for Western style clothing and internationally acclaimed brands like Nike and Adidas. When we look back 20, 30 years ago, Vietnamese society saw a lot of people wearing traditional clothing like Ai Doi, but now that has lost its popularity due to the emerging Western streetwear. And thus we see a change to consumers' preferences and tastes. Okay, that sounds good. Now, how does that relate to Ottaway's business operations, Thirallon? Well, don't worry, I'll tell you. So, first off, let's go on economic imperialism. Vietnam's role as a manufacturing hub provides Ottawa with a robust infrastructure and a skilled labor force experienced in textile and garment production. However, Ottawa will need to differentiate itself in a market crowded with global competitors. One way to do this is by focusing on sustainable practices and ethical production, which are increasingly important to consumers and can help Ottawa to stand out. And don't forget, Vietnam is known for not having the best ethical and sustainability rights and rules. Given the scrutiny of foreign businesses opening in Vietnam, Ottawa must commit to ethical manufacturing practices, adopting fair labor standards and environmentally responsible practices that can avoid the pitfalls of economic imperialism and align with the growing demand for ethically produced goods. As reported by the International Labour Organization, improving labor practices is crucial for companies operating in Vietnam's manufacturing and textile services. In regards to Westernization, market opportunity, which the influence of Westernization presents an opportunity for Ottawa to introduce its brand to a receptive market. With the rising popularity of Western fashion in Vietnam, Ottawa can cater to the preferences of a growing consumer base that values international brands. However, this requires a deeper understanding of local preferences. By combining Western fashion elements with Vietnamese cultural nuances, Ottawa can position themselves effectively in the market. Another thing being adaptation and cultural sensitivity. Despite the openness to Western styles, cultural sensitivity remains crucial. Vietnamese consumers appreciate brands that respect and incorporate local cultural identity. Otway's branding and marketing strategies should reflect this sensitivity to avoid the perception of cultural imperialism. According to a study by the Nelson Corporation, Vietnamese consumers tend to prefer brands that offer a blend of global and local influences, indicating the importance of cultural adaptation. Now I'll be passing it on to my peer, who'll be talking about question 3.
Question 3. Free trade is one of the most powerful mechanisms for driving economic growth and development. By lowering market barriers and expanding access to global goods and services, nations can unlock immense potential. In today's interconnected world, globalization has pushed countries to open their markets, allowing them to compete and grow alongside other trading nations. This shift not only enhances a nation's development, but also ensures its survival in an increasingly competitive global marketplace. When countries embrace free trade, they gain the ability to sell their domestic goods across a wider international market. This opens new revenue streams and stimulates economic activity. At the same time, consumers benefit from reduced prices and improved access to higher quality goods from around the world. Free trade fosters innovation, enhances product variety, and ensures that competitive pricing remains a standard, all of which help elevate living standards and prosperity. Now let's take a closer look at Vietnam and its approach to trade liberalization. Vietnam is working towards creating an independent, resilient economy capable of participating effectively in global production and supply chains. Though its adoption of a socialist-oriented market economy, Vietnam has decentralized significant economic control, giving businesses more freedom to thrive. By pushing for free trade and opening up its markets, Vietnam is allowing domestic businesses to capitalize on international opportunities while offering consumers access to a wider range of products and services. One of Vietnam's greatest achievements in this regard is the signing of 16 free trade agreements. These agreements have allowed the country to establish itself as a hub for both imports and exports, with trading partners spanning Asia, Europe, North and South America. Vietnam's commitment to actively pursuing trade agreements demonstrates its forward-thinking approach towards creating an open and prosperous economy where competitive advantages can be realized by businesses both locally and foreign. However, it is important to note that some industries remain predominantly state-controlled, such as banking and telecommunications, due to the sensitive nature of these sectors. While Vietnam has made significant strides in liberalizing its economy, certain areas remain tightly regulated to protect national interests. In terms of Otway and their goal to open a manufacturing plant overseas, the implication of using Vietnam and their evolving trade landscape are largely positive. Vietnam offers a cost-effective labor force that is specialized in the textiles industry, and it has a high degree of flexibility in its production capacity. As Vietnam continues its sustainable economic growth, it is quickly becoming a global manufacturing powerhouse. The benefits of Vietnam's trade agreements mean that Otway can manufacture products in Vietnam and easily export them to key markets across the world, including Europe and the United Kingdom, the United States, South America, and major Asian nations. By centralizing production in Vietnam, Otway can streamline its operations and capitalize on the country's growing trade connections. On the contrary, with rapid globalization comes the evolution of government policies and compliance standards. As wages in Vietnam rise, the advantage of lower labor costs may have slightly decreased, becoming less prosperous for businesses. Additionally, the country is grappling with inflation and increasing corporate taxes, which can inhibit businesses from fully realizing their potential. In summary, Vietnam's journey towards embracing free trade and liberalizing its economy presents tremendous opportunities for businesses like Otway. As the country grows into a manufacturing and trade powerhouse, the advantages of producing and exporting from Vietnam are clear. However, businesses must also be aware of the challenges posed by rising wages and other economic factors that the country continues its path towards globalization through a rapid development cycle.
So next, we will analyze how Vietnam's current political leaders position themselves in contrast to the elite and foreign threats, and discuss how these political styles impact outweighs entry into the market. The Communist Party of the Vietnam is the sole ruling party in Vietnam, with the General Secretary of the CPV Central Committee being the highest leader. Currently, this position is held by Thirallon. Thirallon and the CPV leader position themselves as opponents of the elite and claim their goal is to protect the interests of the people. The CPV government has launched an anti-corruption campaign known as the Finance, which has led to the resignation of several senior officials. This approach of emphasizing crisis to gain support is typical of the populism. For the foreign threats, populism governments often emphasize national sovereignty and exhibit some resistance to globalization. For example, in 2023, the Vietnamese government issued Direct 24, which increases scrutiny and the regulation of foreign organizations and tourists due to concern about the manipulation in sensitive areas, such as currency, finance, labor, and the foreign investment, especially from the Western country. This indicates that the Vietnam's leadership prioritizes national sovereignty and political control over economic goals. Nevertheless, the Vietnam still actively seeks strategic cooperation with other countries. They are pursuing a diverse and dynamic bilateral relations with all nations. Therefore, although we must consider Vietnam's current political style and adjust its strategy to fit the Vietnam's market, the Vietnam's government has increased scrutiny on foreign investment and business, which means companies like Outway may face stringent compliance requirements and frequent inspections. Outway may need to establish a dedicated compliance department or hiring local legal advisor. Such measures might lead to higher operational costs and potential delays in project approval. So the second impact on Outway is unpredictable business environment. Direct 24 and the ongoing anti-corruption campaign highlight the complex and unpredictable business environment in Vietnam. This uncertainty poses challenges for Outway in long-term planning and investment. A sudden policy change could disrupt operations and impact profitability. Additionally, Vietnam's economic policy are often influenced by political factors, which may result in abrupt changes to trade and the investment regulations. Outway need to adopt more flexible strategy planning and strengthen communication with the local government to ensure timely response to the market changes. The third impact on Outway would be consumer behavior. So nationalistic sentiments and government policy may lead consumers to prefer domestic brands over foreign brands. Outway might need to adjust its marketing strategy to cater to this preference, such as hiring local workers, actively fulfilling corporate social responsibility, and emphasizing its contribution to the local economy. Collaborating with local enterprises could also enhance market acceptance and reduce reliance on foreign identity. However, this may increase the complexity of the Outway's operations in local markets. So, in conclusion, the complex political environment and the regulatory risks make entering the Vietnam's market needs prudent and strategic. Outway may need to adjust their operational strategies, such as maintaining operational transparency, avoiding regulatory risks, and partnering with the local players to adapt to market conditions. However, as the apparel industry, Outway is unlikely to be involved in sensitive area, so the regulatory risk will not be very high. In addition, the Vietnam's market has a lot of potential, and the trade policy welcome the foreign investment, so it will be a good choice to establish a new production facility in Vietnam. That will be all of our presentation. Thanks for your listening. And here is our reference. This is page 1. This is page 2. This is the last page. Thanks for your listening.